everyone, it is Abigail in the Black Book Space, and we're here today to talk about one of my favorite topics of all time, Black men. Specifically, Black male authors. I don't feel like they get the credit they deserve, so we're going to talk about two of my favorites today. So come back and let's chat. Okay, so I definitely have been slipping talking about this author. I read these books a while ago. David Weaver has penned some amazing books. Broken Crayon Still Color. It's a series, so I have books 1 and 2. And they are about a wonderful rapper named Devin. So at first he's doing really well. He has the life of his dreams, the career of his dreams, like the cars and the money and eating really well and all that kind of stuff. Vacations, I'm assuming that is a part of his life as well. That would be a part of my life if I was doing as well as I wanted. But this is Devin, right? So he's doing really well, and then tragedy hits and he loses everything. And he realizes, of course, who his friends are at that time. And he has someone to come into his life to really nurture him back to health. That is the main idea of the story. But in the meantime, he's addicted to drugs and he's just going through a really, really rough time. I feel like one of the main differences between male and female authors is that men really capitalize on, like, when we talk about romance, a lot of the romance in theirs is like somebody kind of like picking them up, helping them out. They're in a really bad place, like a horrible place. I don't feel like when women write these novels, like, we're in this low of a place. Like, no one in some of these books I've been reading has been addicted to drugs and then has someone come in and like really nurture them back to health. That has not happened in a book that I've read by a woman, but it is happening here. This man has a really, really rough life, and I like the way this author writes. I don't normally read a lot of so-called urban fiction. Just because I feel like they can get really heavy on the topics and it's really sad. I feel like he did a really great job of just keeping it authentic and true to what he wanted to talk about in this story. He's done really well for himself with these books as well. So it says author David Weaver is a 6-time award-winning best-selling author. He sold millions of copies worldwide and helped launch the careers of hundreds of authors and publishers. And I love that. And you can go to davidweaver.io for more information. That's where you can get these books. So I think I was on Facebook scrolling years ago, and he had these up as an ad, and of course I had to get them because I really love the color on the cover, and that's why I decided to get these, and I did not look back. So I'm on his mailing list. I believe he's written a few more books. I really would like to get them. I feel like these are good books for like book clubs and for people who are just, looking to get back into reading and dabble in urban fiction, because it's not as rough as some urban fiction can be. This man is a very talented author, and we're celebrating his book today. Comes to Black romance, I feel like Eric Jerome Dickey could be arguably the king of Black romance. This man has a real way with words. So The Business of Lovers was one of the first books I read by him in a long time. It opened my mind to a lot. So this book is about sex workers. I think he really did his research in order to convey the message of how people were being treated, things they go through. The main character in here is named Brick. He never imagined that he was going to get in this industry, I'm sure. At first, he was just working with a friend who needed like a bodyguard. So he'd go with her to her different gigs and just wait outside to make sure she was okay. But then he realized how much money these people were making, so he decided to travel on over to that side as well and become one of the workers. He ends up falling in love with one of the ladies too, and just doing all kinds of things that he never thought he'd do. It's an eye-opening book, but the end is really beautiful. There is a love story in here as well. Eric Jerome Dickey did a really good job with that. There were a lot of really quotable points in here, and I really enjoyed this book. It's one that I probably would read again. It's definitely one that I recommend to a friend because I like the way that it's written. It is a little sad though, because I know that the people in this book never had the intention to become a part of this industry, but thankfully they were all really safe. Nothing crazy happened, which is not what I can say about this book. Before We Were Wicked. So it's a little confusing how this one goes. So, from what I understand, there's a book called Bad Men and Wicked Women. That book was written first, okay, and it's about a certain topic. Then, Before We Were Wicked is actually the prequel to that book. So it was written after it, but it's the prequel because it tells the backstory of the people who are in Bad Men and Wicked Women. I liked this book, but sometimes I wanted to slap the characters. I'm going to tell you why. The main character's name is Ken Swift, and he falls in love with a beautiful woman named Jimmy Lee. And they're in the club first, they're just dancing in the club or whatever. They have a one-night stand. It was supposed to be a one-night stand, but Jimmy Lee circled the block several times. Okay, came back. They end up living together and getting married, having a little one. Her parents hated this man. Like, they hated him. It was awful. Because of that, she ends up at one point, leaving and taking their little one. And that destroyed him. On top of that, Ken Swift, he's not like a person who has like a normal regular job. Like, he's not an author or a librarian or anything like that. He's like a henchman. Like, he goes around beating up people for money. And at first, he was in school. He was a student. But because Jimmy Lee came along and they decided that they needed all of this money, he decided to take on more work for this guy who was like a criminal instead of going to school. Jimmy Lee ended up not going to school either. It was just all bad because of the decisions that they made. These decisions had them have a little girl named Margot, and the beginning, I haven't read this book yet, but the beginning of Bad Men and Wicked Women is Margot coming back and basically trying to extort her dad out of a bunch of money because she knows something that he did because her mom told her. So look now, of course I'm dropping the book. Look, this does not happen usually when women write books. There's not as much crime involved. Like, the adventure and the excitement is not this intense. This is like watching like an intense movie. So I was here for it. I think Eric Jerome Dickey did a really great job with this book. But I'm going to be honest, I'm a little afraid to read Bad Men and Wicked Women because I don't want little Margot to grow up and be a woman who tries to extort her dad. I want her to remain the beautiful, sweet little 5-year-old she was in this book, hanging out with her dad. But I know that's not going to happen. So at some point, I need to grab a copy of the other book and read it and come back and tell you about it. I think that both these books by Eric Jerome Dickey are great for book clubs and blogs. Eric Jerome Dickey is fantastic. He is a big name in the industry, does a really good job, has a great way with words, and I love him, and we need to celebrate him a lot more as well. So that's all I have for you today. Got to talk about these two amazing Black men. Let's celebrate them more. Whatever you do today, I hope it's something that brings you joy. Bye.